Sit! Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
Welcome back to the Dynasty Nerds Podcast. I am your host, Garret Price, here with my fellow co-host, Matt O'Hara.
Hey, I like that co-host sound.
Yeah, that's right. Co-host. We're co-hosters. We're hosting.
It's
co.
Wait.
Does
that make us coasters?
Oh. By the way, over the weekend, I definitely made a super dad joke. I was at my brother-in-law's house, and I look over at my sister-in-law, and I was like, "Hey, what would happen if you put wheels on these things?" She was like, "What?" I was like, This coaster here, what would happen if you put wheels on it? She's like, a roller coaster. I was like, yeah, it is.
Store.
I was pretty proud of it. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
So with that, that's right. Dad jokes all the way. So for this show, we are doing scary players. And if you listen to this previous show, this is not scary like scary good. This is scary as in this player makes me a little bit nervous. And I think there's always players where you draft them and you know that they're being drafted this high for a reason. There's a chance where they could have a really good year. But sometimes the writing is on the wall. And we're not talking about guys that we think are getting hurt. But the writing is on the wall where, man, it looks like it could be a rough season potentially for this guy. Maybe not. But the signs are there, right, Matt?
Absolutely. And you mentioned this maybe being the Halloween special. Maybe we should just change it to that next year. Just call it the Halloween special, the Halloween in July special, the spooky one. And every year, I try to stay away from as many guys that scare me as possible. But it's inevitable on a dynasty roster that it can go from being a good situation to something that is scaring you, and in kind of a drop of a hat, something could change. Age could happen. Maybe there was the chemistry between a quarterback and a wide receiver kind of seemed off, and something doesn't feel right, which can stem from a lot of different reasons, right? So we'll see exactly what we have going forward here, what makes us scared. But everyone gets scared, and it's okay. And it's important that we all know that it's okay. Right, Garret?
Yeah. Look, sometimes I draft a guy and I pee a little. It happens.
It's okay. And this is a safe zone for that.
It's okay. Well, and as the earlier guys in theory should be a little less scary. But even sometimes the early guys, but obviously the later you go into ADP, the scarier the players get. So we're not going to just talk about players like we did in our last episode. Like, of course that player's scary. He's the fourth receiver on his team. No, we're going to talk about guys that are fantasy relevant names that just give us a little bit of apprehension.
Absolutely.
So with that, Matt, I'm going to go first this time. Is that okay?
You go first this time. Please take the floor.
I'm on it. All right. This one stems from not the most recent episodes that we did, but in the repeating as a running back one episode. This player is somebody that took a look at him, and while he is a very talented player, and while he's coming off an absolutely incredible season, he is somebody that really scares me. And it's Kyren Williams.
Ooh.
Now, I am a big Kyren Williams fan. Matt, if you remember, we've talked about it before. I was pretty high on him as a prospect.
You were the lone out of the three, the lone gunman out of the three of us that was beating the drum for Kyren Williams coming out in the draft.
It's true. And I looked really dumb his first year, and I looked really smart his second year. But even as a guy that's a fan of him, and look, his numbers were legit. Averaged 5 yards a carry, over 1,100 yards despite only playing in 12 games due to being a little banged up at some point during the season. Like, his numbers weren't fluky. He was really, really good. But here's the potential issue that I see. One, anytime you have a later round draft capital guy, you know that there's always risk. Two, I hate deep down in my soul that they drafted Blake Corum. I hate it. And it's partly because I literally made the comp of Blake Corum reminds me of Kyren Williams. Why are they on the same team? They are so similar, not incredible athletes, but really smart football players that do a lot of the little things that get the job done, both plus vision and like there's a lot of similarities between these two players, both undersized, both put up good college numbers in big time programs. Like there's just so much in common between these two players that as much as I think Kyren Williams is still going to be the lead back on this team, I worry that the first time he gets nicked up, which could be, I mean, based on what we've seen, he got nicked up as a rookie and he got nicked up in his second season. So, you know, even as much as this isn't about players being injured, he's not somebody that strikes me as a super healthy player.
And you also have I mean, just factor in the fact that he's a running back, and that's kind of built in a little bit, right? The fact that they're going to get nicked at some point.
Absolutely. So when inevitably he does get nicked up, is Blake Corum going to look significantly different than Kyren Williams does in this offense? And I don't think he will. I think he's going to look pretty similar to how Kyren Williams looks. And so that's going to say, well, hey, why put all this wear and tear on one player? If we're going to get similar production out of both, why not keep both of these guys as fresh as possible and let them both play? And so for me, I think that is what stems this fear of mine. It's not that I don't think Kyren Williams could put up similar numbers if the opportunity and the situation was the same. It's this opportunity and situation has changed a lot, and it terrifies me.
Well, I'll one up you even more and just say, what if it doesn't even take an injury for them to figure that out? What if it just, hey, we think this guy's going to be a 1-for-1 kind of replacement if he was to get injured? Let's just see right now if we can kind of use these guys interchangeably, and if there's not a difference, let's just use them interchangeably. You know what I mean? And then it really just becomes they're cannibalizing each other's fantasy production, and really, you know, you go from one high end running back 1 to 2 low end running back 2s, and it really, I mean, it really affects both their values. But when it comes to paying a guy, you and I kind of know exactly what's going to happen. Either he's going to have to take a cheap deal to stay with the Rams and be in that system and split time with a guy that's very similar to him, or he's going to be finding another job. And, you know, just having the uncertainty there surrounding a guy like Kyren Williams, I mean, sure, it's a couple seasons down the road, but as far as his long-term value, that's in the back of everyone's head in your league. So they're going to discount him, and his value is going to go down even more, even if their actual value is the same as far as what they're producing fantasy wise. Kyren Williams will become the less valuable guy pretty quickly there, I think.
Absolutely. And the thing that really sold it for me was double checking our ADP, because I knew roughly where he was going, but I wanted to double check our ADP. And currently he's the 9th running back off the board, which is still a pretty valuable running back. I mean, he's being drafted as a running back 1. And here's the 3 players ahead of him. We'll say 4 players ahead of him and the 4 players behind him. Ready for this?
Let's hear him.
4 players ahead of him: Brock Bowers, Tua, Devonta Smith, Nico Collins. One's right behind him: Jared Goff, Kyle Pitts, Michael Pittman, and Travis Kelce. I would want literally all of those players except maybe Travis Kelce on my team instead of Kyren Williams. And so for me, the range that he's going is scary to me, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah. And I agree with your assessment as far as you'd want all those other guys besides him, besides Travis Kelce rather, over him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 2 for 2 on this show. Obviously we're just a small sample size, but I'm with you there. I think that is too high, and that's what makes him kind of scary in my eyes too.
Ooh. Maybe I should put some Halloween like sound effects in the background.
I like this. Yes. Make it as corny as possible. I love it.
Absolutely. All right, Matt, give us your scary player.
Hey, Nerd Herd, this is Rich Dotson. I've got some exciting news for you. Underdog Fantasy is back with their annual Best Ball Mania tournament, and this year it's bigger and better than ever with a whopping $15 million prize pool. Best Ball Mania 5 is the ultimate fantasy football competition where you draft your team and then sit back and relax. No trades, no waivers, just your best lineup every week automatically set by Underdog. For just $25, you can enter for a shot at the grand prize of $1.5 million. Plus, there are tons of other prizes throughout the season, including $500,000 for the top regular season performer. And guess what? We've got a special offer just for our listeners. Use the promo code NERDS when you sign up, and Underdog will match your first deposit 100% up to $100. That's right. Double your money to get more entries and more chances to win. Don't miss out. Drafts are happening now, and entries close before the first game of the season. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app, sign up with the promo code NERDS, and start your journey to fantasy football glory today. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. The terms do apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. In Tennessee, call 1-800-889-9789.
All right, so my first spooky scary player is somebody that I maybe didn't warm up to quite as quickly as the rest of the community, and now I'm falling off quicker than probably most due to that. But if you've been a long time listener, you're probably going to know the words that are coming out of my mouth before I even say the name. But Stefon Diggs is my spooky player, and currently right now he's going off the board 84th, right around there, so right around the 7th round range, 7th, 8th round range. 30-year-old wide receiver. Last year finished as wide receiver 9 on the season in PPR leagues, averaging about 16.1 points per game. Which all sounds great. It's fine, right? Like that's kind of what we've grown accustomed to with Stefon Diggs the past few seasons. But if you dig in a little bit and or if you just even remember the end of last season, you don't even really need to dig in. The second half of the season was quite different than the first half of the season. And, who knows what this really stems from, him getting older, him being a pain in the ass. I mean, and kind of falling out of favor there in Buffalo a little bit. I'm not sure. But the second half of the season, weeks 10 through 18, he was actually wide receiver 44 in PPR and averaged only 9.8 points in PPR. So it really was the kind of tale of two seasons last year for Diggs. And, aside from all the other stuff and kind of seeing how he fell off towards the end of the season, I think you can look at another kind of telling stat to kind of be worried this season. And if you look at Diggs's production last year, it came really with a pretty decent target share. He had 29% of his team's targets, which was good for the eighth highest in the league last year. And then you kind of flip that over and look at what Houston did last season, and just based off of memory, this is kind of why I looked at this is they spread the ball around quite a bit. CJ Stroud specifically wasn't locked in on one guy and kind of made some comments about how the fact that, him not having a true number one kind of made it difficult for the defenses to defend them. And then you look at the numbers, and nobody on the team had a higher than 19% target share, and that was Nico Collins. After that, it was 16%, and that was the tight end Dalton Schultz. And then it was Robert Woods at 13, Tank Dell at 13, Noah Brown at 10. So they really did, according to the numbers, not just the feeling that I had, they really did spread the ball around quite a bit, which makes me think, Stefon Diggs is not going to be getting this huge target share that he got last season, which really propelled him up to those wide receiver 9 numbers. And without that target share, is he going to be more of the last season's second half Stefon Diggs that we saw finish as a wide receiver 44? If so, I think there's going to be a lot of disappointed people out there that really aren't getting the kind of, either wide receiver 1 numbers that they were expecting or high end wide receiver 2 numbers that they were hoping for at the very least for a player like Stefon Diggs. So, while change of sceneries can be good at times, Stefon Diggs went from Minnesota to Buffalo and kind of thrived and turned into that, bona fide number one. They can also be bad, especially when it's your third team, and really you've been a malcontent at both stops you've been at prior. We'll see if the chemistry is actually there with a guy like Stefon Diggs and they're force feeding the ball, or Houston kind of stays with their MO from last season and they spread the ball around and Stefon Diggs kind of struggles just to get the share that he needs to be fantasy relevant at this point in his career.
Yeah, I recently did a video talking about whether or not players are washed or not. Are they at the point where we need to give up on them? And there was 8 guys, and we had four in each category, and Stefon Diggs was in the washed category. He's a guy that I don't believe is going to be a major fantasy contributor anymore. And a lot of the things you said or things that I echoed in the video, and one of the biggest things that was just shocking to me was did not have a single 100-yard game after week 6 and only had 1 touchdown after, I want to say it was either week 8 or week 9, something like that.
Week 9 he had 1 touchdown. Yeah, and then after that it was week 12 and that was it. So it was after week 9 he only had 1 touchdown the rest of the way.
Yeah, so I mean, just not what you want to see out of a guy. If you see that out of a 27-year-old, okay, I'm not as worried. It was just a weird, second half. A guy in his 30s, it might be the beginning of the end. So I'm with you. I'm out on Stefon Diggs. He terrifies me. I'm trying to get reasonably what I can for a guy like Stefon Diggs because I don't think this is going to be a career year in Houston.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man.
Hey, guys, let me tell you about our friends at Sleeper. Guess what? Our app the mini is live on Sleeper right now. The Dynasty GM, pretty. You can use the analyzer. You can use the trade calculator. And my favorite thing is the inbox, right? Where all your trades from all your Sleeper leagues are right there. You can actually push trades through the actual Sleeper app. And right now, we couldn't be more excited to be partners with them. And right now, if you don't know, they are doing DFS. And I know how many people that play Dynasty play DFS as well. And right now, there's not a better place to play DFS than Sleeper. They're offering up to 100 times your entry, the highest payout in the whole DFS market right now. You can track your fantasy players and your Sleeper picks in real time. All you got to do is choose 2 to 8 of your favorite players from pregame, live in-game, or even across different sports. Pick more or less than the predicted stats, and only on Sleeper you can get up to 100 times your payout. You can share with your friends and get rewarded together. Make sure you use that promo code NERD so our friends know that friends sent them their way. And get your deposit match and have a good time. Have all your DFS, all of your fantasy leagues, and now even a Dynasty GM in one spot. It is fully operational inside Sleeper right now. And then when you're a Nerd Herd member, you get that full access to that. And remember, you also want to download the Dynasty Nerds app because they're both in there. Check it out. Check our friend Sleeper. Check out the DFS. Use that promo code NERDS.
Get your whole estate.
So who's your next follow-up spooky character?
Ooh. All right. So bad. All right.
So terrible.
My next one, I had actually been planning to talk about this guy for a while, and somebody kept always jumping him and things like that, and I never got a chance to talk to him or talk about him. And now I'm a little frustrated because, of course, his value is dropping a little bit because of some news that came out, not because of him specifically, but Jordan Addison scares me. Jordan Addison right now, he is a player that he is 72nd off the board in ADP. And if you didn't hear the news, another potential DUI situation. That's his second traffic issue in the past 2 off seasons. And so wondering if, is this guy one of those players that's going to continue to be a knucklehead off the field? And we see some of those guys where they have a lot of promise, but you add that in and it just derails their career. So you have that. But even outside of that, I was already a little bit worried. Anytime you lose a quarterback like a Kirk Cousins, who is, I get it, he's not Pat Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. He's not this, Mount Rushmore of current NFL quarterbacks. But as far as getting his playmakers the ball, one of the best in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you go from a guy like that to an unknown rookie, and do I think J.J. McCarthy's a solid player? Yeah. I think he could even end up being a good quarterback like Kirk Cousins. But there's a lot of risk there because even when you're doing well, you're getting half of these first-round quarterbacks right if they're not top 10 guys. And I get it. He was just outside of the top 10, but or was he 10? Was he 10 or 11? I can't remember now.
Oh man, now you got me confused. I'll look it up real fast.
Either way, he was right there, but either way, it's not like he was this top 5 bona fide guy. So we're looking at 50-50 odds that he's even relevant in a couple of years, let alone a quarterback the caliber of a Kirk Cousins. So the odds of him getting to that point seem fairly low to me. Then you have the fact that they did what they were supposed to do in Minnesota.
He was
and
10,
they
by the way.
ponied
I'm sorry.
Up. So he
10.
did get 10. Okay.
Yep.
So they ponied up and gave Justin Jefferson a monster deal. So any sliver of hope that Justin Jefferson would move on and Jordan Addison would become the top receiver on the team is now gone. TJ Hawkinson is there. And I know will miss some games probably early, but he's going to be demanding a lot of targets. And then even the running back they brought in, Aaron Jones, I know that's not a long-term thing, but very good pass-catching running back. So he's a player that I'm worried about the knucklehead factor. He's a player that I'm worried about the target share factor. And then he's just a player that I think is a good talent, but not anything special as far as ability goes. So he's a player right now that if I could get other receivers in his ADP range, the Xavier Worthies, the Ladd McConkeys, Debo, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, I'm much more interested in getting those types of players than I am a Jordan Addison. And even Jaden Reed is going significantly, I shouldn't say significantly, but he's going 10 spots later in ADP. I would much rather have Jaden Reed because at least I have the potential of being the number 1 wide receiver on my team. And right now, tie me to Jordan Love before I would want to be tied to JJ McCarthy. So for me, he's just a really scary player that I want out from underneath.
Yeah, and that's all very sound reasoning, I think. And Jordan Addison is a fine, like you said, he's a good player.
Yeah.
But he's never going to be better than Justin Jefferson. And now that Justin Jefferson's tied to that team long term, you are looking at the second fiddle in an offense no matter what. So guys like Jaden Reed, I think, make a ton of sense over him. And I don't know if that's just kind of the market kind of hasn't corrected yet, or not enough people are in on Jaden Reed like we are. But I would expect that to flip at some point. But Jordan Addison, I can see why he's scary. 108 targets last season, 70 receptions, 911 yards, 10 touchdowns. So I think he was propelled up a bit by that as well. And, obviously with Justin Jefferson coming back, you would expect that to tilt kind of the other way back to Jefferson. And really you're going to see his targets drop.
And even Hawkinson was gone too.
Right. So you're going to see a lot of that stuff kind of tilting away from him, I think, because I think both those players are just a little bit more talented. But not to say Jordan Addison's not. I don't want it to sound like that, but I think he's just kind of, he's good, not great. And he's a fantastic guy to have, I think, opposite of a great player like Justin Jefferson, to kind of be able to chew up and do all the professional things you need to be a number two and kind of beat single coverage and all that stuff we talked about when he first came out in the draft. So I think it's a great spot for him, but I'm not sure from a fantasy perspective if last year wasn't kind of his high water mark or near his high water mark for his career. So I understand him being scary, and kind of the value, it has nowhere to go but kind of level out for me, and maybe some people are projecting it to go up slightly. I mean, we'll see, but that's how I see it, at least. I'm looking at Jordan Addison through my Justin Jefferson colored goggles or whatever. I just expect a lot more out of Justin Jefferson now that he's healthy, and I think he's going to chew up quite a bit of those targets from last year.
Hey, Dynasty Nerds, it's time to take your Dynasty game to the next level with FFPC's Dynasty Startup Leagues. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started, FFPC has a league for you, with entry fees ranging from $100 up to $5,000. Choose from a variety of formats, including Superflex, Best Ball Superflex, Triflex, 1QB, and Standard. With weekly lineups, waivers, trades, head-to-head matchups, and playoffs, FFPC's fully managed leagues provide the ultimate Dynasty experience. Most importantly, the leagues are here to stay. FFPC has never had a Dynasty league fold. They manage the entire commissioner experience, from buy-in management to fulfilling your orphans. FFPC is perfect place to expand your Dynasty league portfolio. And here's the best part. As a Dynasty Nerds listener, you can get $25 off any entry fee as a new member when you use the promo code NERDS. Head over to myffpc.com now to draft your team, manage your roster, and dominate your league with FFPC. That's myffpc.com. Promo code NERDS for $25 off any entry fee for new members. FFPC, where Dynasty dreams become a reality.
Absolutely. All right, Matt, give us your next scary player.
All right, my next spooky, scary character is Raheem Mostert. Currently going off the board 133, so it is a little bit later. But he's a 32-year-old running back, but he's part of an offense there in Miami that, if you're a contender, you're looking at him much more seriously than that 133 ADP would indicate. And I think you're relying on him to do some good things this season, and it might get a little bit murky. So we have a great article that was written that disappeared from my screen. Oh, wait, here it is. I clicked on the wrong link. By Steve Pintado at the end of June 28th. And it was all about progression and regression in rushing touchdowns in 2024. And, I think a lot of us already know that Raheem Mostert kind of really popped this past season because he scored 18 rushing touchdowns and then an additional 3 touchdowns receiving. And, you dig into this article a bit by Steve, and really he breaks down some pretty good numbers and has some great points about progression and regression. I'm just going to touch on the regression stuff here for my argument with Mostert. But he goes back to 2014 and kind of pulls some numbers as far as the chance of a running back actually hitting double digits once. And it was 11.5% chance that it ever even happens, just hitting double digit touchdowns. And from that, if you do it once, there is only a 2% chance of you repeating that. Now, Mostert's numbers are almost exclusively bumped up due to the fact that he scored all those touchdowns. He was nothing special on the ground. Only just barely cleared 1,000 yards, 1,012 yards. He had 175 receiving yards on 25 receptions, which is nice. It's a nice bonus, but it's still not going to elevate you way up to where he was last season. So enter this season, and there's all the hype about Devon Achane coming in and getting more involved in the passing game, and I would expect him to get more rushing attempts as well. Last year, he only had a 21% share compared to the 43% share for Raheem Mostert. And on top of that, you're going to bring in a 4th-round draft pick like Jalen Wright, who is a very explosive running back in his own right, and now he's the big back, right? He's like 215 pounds to Mostert's about 205, and Achane, coming in at 195 pounds ish. So I would expect all Raheem Mostert's numbers to kind of take a bit of a dip going into his age 32 season, but specifically, there's a 2% chance of him even getting to double-digit touchdowns again. I think that's going to be the hugest factor in his regression here this season, and why he makes me so nervous and why he's so scary to me. I just everyone wants a piece of this offense. I'm not sure Raheem Mostert is the one you want to go attack. I think Devon Achane is fantastic. His price is pretty high though as well. I think that that's reflected in the fact that everyone loves Achane going forward. I think Jalen Wright is the guy to kind of target here. I know, he's not going to be cheap either because he's a rookie. But once he's on the field and in this offense and that people see him in space, I think he's going to be a 1-for-1 replacement for Raheem Mostert, and Mostert's days of kind of having this dream job are over. And let's not forget Mostert's history of injuries. You look at his games played throughout his career, and it's 11, 3, 11, 9, 16, 8, 1, 16, 15. When is this other shoe going to drop here? And at age 32, you don't want to project injuries, but for a guy that's had the history that he's had, it really is only a matter of time. And once I think we get Jalen Wright, we'll get a vision or a look at Jalen Wright and Devon Achane as a backfield, I think that's kind of the future. The future might be sooner than some people think here for the Miami Dolphins.
No, I think all of that is completely legitimate, and touchdowns, guys getting propped up by touchdowns because they are a little more fluky than other stats is always a guy that screams like, this could go wrong. This could go south very quick. And it is scary. And yes, I still project the Miami Dolphins to be scoring a lot of touchdowns, but what if those are more passing touchdowns, or what if those are more Devon Achane touchdowns, or, there's a lot of other places that those touchdowns could go. So I think that's perfectly reasonable to be nervous, terrified even by Raheem Mostert next year. Could he repeat? Sure, it's definitely possible, but it looks unlikely. Matt, you ready for my last one?
I'm ready for your last one. I'm not sure which way you're going here. What have we done? We've done 2 running backs and
2 running backs.
I did a running back and a wide receiver. You did a running back.
Yeah, 2 running backs and 2 receivers. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what do we got here on this third one?
2 of each.
All right.
Going back to the running back room.
So
we've got 3 running backs.
It is the scariest room, so I understand.
Absolutely. And the reason I said I have 2 main ones and then another one is because I felt like we had to say this player on the show, even though I know we've touched on him a decent amount this offseason. It's Rachaad White. Rachaad White is terrifying. Yes. He is so scary. And he's still being drafted fairly high by a lot of people. And look, maybe this will be one of our really bad takes, and he just has an awesome season, because I know that there's somebody right now punching a wall because we're talking about Rachaad White again as a player that we don't think is going to perform. But look, if you had to guess, Matt, we know that obviously his receiving work propped up a lot last year. Where do you think he ranked as far as attempts last season? Rushing attempts. If you had to guess.
I would
you on
say
the spot. No pressure.
No. I would say 12, 13.
He was tied for second, Matt.
What?
Tied for second in attempts with Christian McCaffrey.
He only had like 990 yards or something crazy, right?
Exactly. Only 990 yards. So Christian McCaffrey, 1,459 yards on those same amount of attempts. Derrick Henry had the most with 280. He had 1,167 yards. Like, those two guys had 12 touchdowns, 14 touchdowns. The only other guy over 260 carries was ETN. He broke 1,000 yards and had 11 touchdowns. Like, he was so unproductive with all of his opportunities. And guess who they bring in? They bring in Bucky Irving, who I think is better between the tackles, but he's also just as good, if not better, in the receiving game. Bucky Irving, I mentioned in the last show, there were only 2 running backs in college football that had over 50 catches. Bucky Irving was the other one. Bucky Irving had 56 receptions for the Oregon Ducks last year. He's a very good pass-catching back. So this smells very similar to the Kyren Williams, Blake Corum situation where you bring in guys that can do similar things, and I think they're just going to eat into each other. Right now, we have Rachaad White in our ADP. Rachaad White is going off the board as running back 14. And guys in his range, a lot of other running backs like Jonathan Brooks and Josh Jacobs and James Cook. But you also have receivers like Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, a little bit ahead of him, Tank Dell, George Pickens, TJ Hawkinson's going in that range. Like, just a bunch of players that I think have a much safer floor and probably also a higher ceiling for 2024.
Yeah, I mean, that's all. Those are all good points. And you know, Rachaad White, I think he's a very polarizing player, right? We in general don't like him, but obviously the fantasy points from last season kind of say a different thing. I can't remember who it was or where I read it. There was some stat about his offensive line being terrible and him getting, you know, the least amount of yards before contact. Like, he's like one of those leaders in one of those categories. So it might not all be his fault. We will have to see, you know, this season how somebody else behind that same offensive line looks. Obviously, they've done some things to change the offensive line. So we'll see if he gets any better this season as far as efficiency, because you know, the numbers that he was putting up last season, the 3.6 yards per carry average, that's ugly. You can't continue being an every down back, and that's what really scares the crap out of me is everyone sees the numbers from last year and assumes, hey, this guy's going to be the guy. But when you average 3.6 yards per carry, it's hard for coaches to justify giving you the ball over and over again, right? That's kind of the crux of the argument here. And with somebody like Bucky Irving coming in, I do think I agree with you that he profiles better, more efficiently through, you know, in between the tackles and through that line of scrimmage than a guy like Rachaad White does. So we'll see. Only time will tell. But he's been a guy that scared me ever since he came into the league and people were hyping him up. So he's already outperformed kind of what I thought he was able to do. But similar to like a Stefon Diggs, I'm always kind of on those kind of players when they do perform. I'm kind of always waiting for my bias to show back up. So I am a little bit quicker to kind of be scared away from those type of players than I would somebody I truly loved coming out, like a Javonte Williams or somebody like that who also is in somewhat of a scary situation with, who knows. Absolutely. They draft a young guy and all that kind of stuff. So We'll see, man. So I guess Javonte Williams is my other guy that I'm kind of scared of, but not as scared because I love him too much to be afraid.
There you go. It's kind of like that dog that you have that is kind of mean, kind of a jerk, wants to bite people, but he's your dog. So you're not as scared of him as maybe you should be because he's a terrifying dog.
I was going to go with the love conquers all analogy, but that's also
mine was a little more dark, but whatever.
It's all right. You're a little bit more Christopher Nolan. I'm apparently more like Princess Bride or something. I don't know.
I love it. And I love Christopher Nolan. All right. So with that, that wraps up our scary player show for this year. Like I said, maybe we'll bring it back in October because it does feel like it should go with that. But either way, that wraps it up. We are going to be back for the Nerd Herd episode tomorrow. Tomorrow for you also, if you're listening. We're going to be talking about rebuilding targets. So players that we are looking at, we often go for picks and rebuilds, but sometimes it's good to go for certain players as well. And we'll highlight some guys that we think were really good targets for you when you're rebuilding your team.
Yeah, I mean, I've already got a couple of guys in mind. We'll see if when I dig in, they're still my guys or if I have to change gears.
That happens to me all the time. I'm like, I'm definitely picking this guy. And then I look at him, I'm like, nope, definitely not picking that guy.
Doesn't work. This does not work. All right, you guys.
Absolutely.
Adios.